The Great War, 1914 to 1918. Dates you must know. You must know 1914 to 1918. We'll add some specifics to those dates later. Come August of this year, we'll be at the 100-year anniversary of the start of World War I. Not a very auspicious anniversary, but one to be aware of nonetheless. Okay, so when it comes to a war, people don't just, hey, you're ugly, let's fight. There have to be actual reasons to go to war. And for the Great War, there are 4. By the way, why do we call it the Great War and not World War I? Right, we thought that this was going to be, as they called it, the war to end all wars. There will never be another war like this. This war will be so magnificent and so awful that we'll never fight again. They also thought it would be over in a matter of weeks, so they were wrong twice, apparently. Okay, the 4 causes of the Great War. 4 causes, 3 isms, and an unce. 3 isms and an unce. You may have heard these last year if you were paying attention in history class. We'll start with one of the widely prevalent isms. Even nations that lack some of these other things have this ism. Nationalism. What? Seriously? Okay. Oh. Doggone it. Now the suspense is all gone. Okay. This ism is that overblown sense of love for your nation. This goes beyond let's stand and say the pledge each day. This is my dad can beat up your dad. My team will kill your team. Because you like that country, you're going to have to die. It's really overblown pride in your nation. And one of the things that often goes hand in hand with that super magnified nationalism is militarism. If my dad's gonna be able to beat up your dad, my dad's gonna have to spend some time at the gym. Well, if my country's gonna be able to beat up your country, my country's gonna have to do some investing in a strong military. And the military will also be heavily invested with that sense of nationalism. And a strong military is very key. Because if the nation next door to yours is all rah, 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 go us, that's not very far from rah, 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 wait a minute, why aren't you cheering for us? And rah, 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 we're going to make you cheer for us. And so what's your defense about that? Well, rah, rah yourself and build up your own military to defend yourself against those rah-rahers next door and their military. During the Cold War, we utilized a system called mutually assured destruction, MAD. And it was a little mad, as in cuckoo mad, not mad, angry mad. Mutually assured destruction said, if our enemy, at that point in time it was the Soviet Union, has enough kilotons of nuclear weapons to destroy us 3 times over, then we need to have enough kilotons of nuclear weapons to destroy them 3 times over. And the idea is, if you know that they can completely wipe you out, and they know that you can completely wipe them out, thus your destruction is mutually assured, then who would be crazy enough to pull that trigger or push that button? So it's called mutually assured destruction, and we convinced ourselves during the Cold War that it was a great deterrent. Well, that concept applied backward works to some degree for this militarism. If my army is as big and as strong and as powerful as my neighbor's army, then he wouldn't dare to attack me. Likewise, if his army is as big as mine, why would I waste my time attacking him? It's clear we're just going to fight to a stalemate, right? So it becomes an arms race. The other ism is a very prevalent one and one that we've talked about in great detail in here. We even started at the end of last semester. The Industrial Revolution drove people to seek additional resources. And where did they go to get those? Other countries. They go out and start finding colonies. And what do we call that process? Very good. So nationalism and economic causes lead to imperialism. If my country can beat up your country, my country has to have a strong economy to do that. And in order to have a strong economy, my country needs colonies. Well, you know what? If my country's better than your country, then it should have more colonies than your country. And wait a minute. Think about French Indochina. How did France get that colony? No, not everybody at once. Calm down. How did French Indochina come to be no longer Vietnam and become a French colony? Just last section. What? No, say it again, Jade. There was a war. That means that imperialism can be a trigger for militarism, or if your military is big enough, you can use it to get colonies. It works both ways. You see how all of this is so interrelated. Okay. It's hard to find an initial cause for any of this. You might start with militarism, which leads your nation to pride in nationalism. You pretty much can't start with imperialism. You got to have nationalism or militarism first before you go out and try and conquer other folks. Okay? So the final one, anybody know what the fourth cause of the Great War is? Entangling alliances. Entangling alliances. You guys all know what an alliance is, right? Treaties, agreements, negotiated pacts of sorts. What's entangling alliances then? What? Multiple treaties that overlap, and much like when your hair's in a knot, are all entangled. Okay? It's not unlike high school social relationships. Okay? Miranda once had a crush on Pat, but Pat liked Gabby. And so Miranda hates Gabby for the fact that Pat liked her. Gabby never did anything to Miranda. Pat liked Gabby, but Miranda hates Gabby. So Miranda also then hates Tram because Tram is friends with Gabby. So when when Tram starts dating Ryan, Miranda tries to get in the middle of that and break them up just to hurt Tram, because anybody hurting Tram will also hurt Gabby because Gabby hurt Miranda. It is so confusing. And it is how it goes. It's the petty stuff. What I'm telling you is the same kinds of machinations that we use as individuals against each other are not limited to interpersonal relationships. The same sorts of things can govern geopolitics as well. So what you have here with your three isms and your unts is the kindling that it takes to start World War I. Any Boy Scouts in here? Girl Scouts? Okay. We have a used-to-be Girl Scout. All right, we're camping. And I go out and I gather up all kinds of firewood and kindling, and we pile it up and we stand there and we watch it, and it doesn't do a very good job keeping us warm. What are we missing? Fire. Some sort of spark to start our fire. Anybody remember what the spark that starts this fire is? The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Okay, so we have our causes, then we'll have our spark, and when we put all of those together, that was disappointing. We're going to try it again with the sound actually on. Somebody accused me of having Michael Bay edit this slideshow. We'll come back to Franz Ferdinand. We'll mention him again. So much better with the sound, right? I'm not even kidding you. 20 minutes last night getting the sound timed right with the drop. I'm a little ashamed of myself, but I'm also proud. Okay. So let's get into some of the more specific parts of these entangling alliances. And the entangling alliances are going to feed off of the isms and also feed the growth of the isms. Go. No? Oh, great, I broke it. Okay. The triple, no, yeah, okay. We'll start with the dual alliance in 1879. This is a tough one. Are you ready for it? How many countries were part of the dual alliance? Very good. Very good. 2 countries are part of the dual alliance in 1879. Germany and Austria-Hungary. Whoop. I clicked one too many times. I spoiled the surprise. Germany and Austria-Hungary. Did it again. Okay. Now, Germany will join the, just focus on the dual alliance now, even though I clicked too many times. Germany joins the dual alliance because they are afraid of Russia. This is rational and irrational at the same time. Who is the leader of Germany? Kaiser Wilhelm II, same guy we've talked about before, Kaiser Wilhelm II. Who's the leader of Russia? Tsar Nicholas II. They're cousins. They know each other on a personal level. They are friends. But Germany as a nation is afraid of Russia as a nation. Russia could squash Germany. Remember, 1879, Germany's kind of a baby country, aren't they? Kind of a baby nation. They haven't had a chance to put much together. Austria-Hungary is afraid of Russia being a threat on their eastern border. Like the entire Habsburg Empire to the east is bordered by Russia. So if Russia decides to attack them, boom, they're right there. Okay. It's like if somebody says, oh, I'm going to egg your house. You're like, yeah, whatever. And they're actually standing on the sidewalk in front of your house holding a carton of eggs. It's not going to take much for them to follow through with their threat, right? Whereas if they're standing on your sidewalk and they're like, I'm going to egg your house, and you're like, yeah, and they have to go to the store and buy the eggs and come back, that's a little different. So Austria-Hungary has a reason to be slightly more afraid of Russia than Germany does. So the dual alliance is formed because these guys have a mutual fear of Russia. In 1882, the dual alliance becomes the triple alliance. How many countries? You guys are so smart. Yes, 3. Now, Germany and Austria-Hungary are part of this because they're afraid of Russia. So Italy had joined because? No, they're not afraid of Russia. They're mad at France. Oh, duh, right? Of course they would join this alliance to protect against Russia because they're mad at France. By the way, the dual alliance could only be activated if one of those nations was attacked by Russia. If either one of them does the attacking, no good. Somebody else attacks them, no good. The dual alliance only applies if one of them's attacked by Russia. They don't change those terms when they add Italy. So this treaty only kicks in if one of them's attacked by Russia. The odds of Italy being attacked by Russia? Yeah, pretty small. So why would Italy join this alliance, pledging to defend Germany and Austria-Hungary against Russia when Italy's, talk about baby nation, 1882, I mean, Italy's still sucking its pacifier here, right? Okay, so explain this. Italy joins this triple alliance because they're mad at France. Okay, France sent its fleet in and occupied Tunis. Tunis is the capital city of Tunisia. Tunisia is where? Northern Africa. When France did that, that was pretty much the end of Italy's chances at getting a colony in North Africa. Because who's got Egypt and Libya? Suez Canal. The British, good. And with the French occupying Tunisia, they've got Tunisia, and it used to be called French Algeria. And, gee, what language do they speak in Morocco? French. Okay. So, that stitches up the colony, the Northern Africa. So, Italy is mad at France for cutting off their colonial chances in Northern Africa. Okay. So, how do you get back at France? Well, 1882. In 1870, France got into a little spat with Prussia. Very good. It was called the Franco-Prussian War. Who won? Oh, Prussia definitely did, and it resulted in the unification of Germany. By the way, when France lost that, they lost a little bit of territory, a couple of pieces of land on the eastern part of France called Alsace and Lorraine. France is still angry about that 12 years later. So, the way for Italy to tell France how upset they are with France taking their last chance at a colony in Northern Africa is to go and make best friends with France's enemy. Ha 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 ha! We'll show you. Duh. I mean, how did you not see that? The minute you looked at this, weren't you not like, oh, of course, it was to get back at France for the colonial thing, and you would do. Are you following how complex this is? Okay, now, earlier you said the Triple Alliance had 3 nations in it. Wrong! The Triple Alliance of 1883 has 4 nations in it. That's right. Curveball. Didn't see that coming. Romania. Romania joins in. Why? Because they can. Because they border Russia. Because Germany and Austria-Hungary aren't going to turn down nations that have able-bodied men to throw at the cannon fire. Yeah. So, as far as the, from our Americentric view of the war, this is the bad guys' side. We're done with them for now. Let's move on to the good guys. You'll be able to tell because we change colors. The problems with the Triple Alliance. Okay. Italy is unhappy almost from the beginning. Okay. Yeah, they stuck it to France. Boy, by golly, they showed those Frenchmen who's boss by making friends with their enemy. But wait a minute. What was Italy going to get out of that alliance? Nothing. And they would have to sacrifice their men and their wealth fighting in a war that meant nothing to them. So, when war breaks out in 1914, Italy is going to welch on its promise. They'll back out. They'll go, what? Triple Alliance? What? I don't know what you're talking about. Germany who? Never met them. And when Italy does that, Romania will also back out. They'll be like, oh, we're sorry, you must be mistaken. You said Triple Alliance. There's already 3 of you there. That's Germany, Austria, Hungary, right? Germany and Austria and Hungary. So that's 3. We're done. You need to learn to count. Okay. Plot twist. In 1902, 20 years after Italy joined the Triple Alliance to stick its thumb in France's eye, Italy signs a secret alliance with France. Mind's blown? A secret alliance, a secret treaty with them. I guess they got over being mad about Tunis. I'm sorry I broke up with you because you looked at that girl. Please, can we just be Facebook friends? Please? But that goes too far because Facebook friends is public. This was a secret alliance. From a special private Twitter.
They secretly followed each other.
Yeah. Okay, so on the other side, the dual alliance. Wait a minute, what? No, we already had a dual alliance. That's not fair. Well, you know what? If the other side has two countries that want to be allies, what better name do you have for it than dual alliance? No, dual alliance, 1895. This is kind of an odd couple. Russia, clear over here, right? Nope. If you're Russia and you're looking for an ally because you're concerned that Germany and Austria-Hungary are ganging up together against you, you're hanging out over here in Europe, who are you going to want as your ally? Why, but of course, the only other European nation farther away from you. France. The only way they could have gone further is that they went for, like, Iceland. Britain would have been further, I guess. Yeah. So Russia and France. Clearly, a match made in heaven. Okay. What you don't know is that Russia is seriously aggravated by the other dual alliance between Germany and Austria-Hungary. Russia doesn't see that as a defensive pact against them. They see it as an aggressive pact against them. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so they're... Okay, so Italy and...
Romania.
Yeah, their alliance is for Russia.
Their alliance is against Russia.
Okay.
With, yeah, that other triple alliance is against this side.
Okay.
We switched sides now. We're looking at the other side. We're theoretically talking about the good guys here now,
Okay.
from the U.S. point of view. All right. What you guys don't know is that when Russia was building the Trans-Siberian Railroad, what does Trans-Siberian mean? It went across Siberia. Yeah. It connected the western portion of Russia with their eastern coast on the Pacific Ocean. Okay. Guess who helped them do that? Who sent railroad engineers and sold them materials and sold them a locomotive? Why, France did. They made friends. France had great railroad engineers. They built a fantastic network of rails and stuff once they were done with all of their Napoleonic wars and then deciding whether or not they were going to be a monarchy or, you know, you remember all of the republics. Okay. Once they got all done with that, they built fantastic infrastructure. And when it comes time for Russia to try to modernize, remember when we talked about that with the Alexanders? Okay. They asked France for help. France says, absolutely. So they build a wonderful, big, long railroad track across Russia. So it's the basis for friendship. Okay. So why does France want in on this? Well, France is also concerned about the Triple Alliance, because when you think about the map of Europe at this point in time, to France's southeast is Italy. To their immediate east and northeast is Germany. Right on the other side of that is Austria-Hungary. France feels a little vulnerable as well, so they're like, hey, what can it hurt? France doesn't limit their friendships just to Russia. They form, in 1904, what is called the Entente Cordiale. An entente is an agreement. It's a meeting, a discussion, okay? And cordial, what word does that sound like? Cordial. And what does that mean? Friendly, but not overly so. It's like, hello, hello. Anybody ever watch Seinfeld reruns? Yeah. Hello, Newman. You know that it's not quite right, but it's at least cordial, slightly friendly. So the Entente Cordiale is between Britain and France in 1904. Now, this is one of the latest formed alliances. And it's Britain that's been holding things up. Britain wanted nothing to do with an alliance with anybody on the continent. Remember, Britain's an island. How many times has Britain been successfully invaded? Twice. Caesar, William the Conqueror. That's it. It's a very difficult place to conquer. They've got a strong navy. If you can't even get there, hard to beat them on land. Ultimately, what convinces Britain that they do need some friends on the continent is a naval buildup on the part of Wilhelm II. Germany, as part of their modernization plan, builds up a huge navy. Well, wait a minute. Who's got the biggest, baddest flotilla on the seas? Great Britain does. Don't you be sailing in here with your fancy, fancy ships and claiming that you are master of the seven seas. That's us. When Germany does that, Britain sees it as a direct and pointed threat right at them. Why else would Germany be building up a powerful navy if it wasn't to challenge the one nation with the most powerful navy on earth? So that's why Britain finally agrees. Why does France want to ally with Britain? Because France is not bad at geography. Well, other than Napoleon. France looks at a map and says, gee, here we are, and there's Russia all the way over there. And you know what? If a war breaks out between us and Germany, we think it may take a while for Russia to come to our aid. Perhaps if we had an ally somewhat closer than 3,000 miles, we'll be in a slightly better position should war develop. And so they work very hard to get this, this treaty negotiated. The Entente Cordiale is wedded with the dual alliance in 1907, and we formed the Triple Entente. How many nations? Are you sure?
Yes.
It's not a trick question this time. There are 3. Can you guess? Russia, France, and Great Britain. Yay! So, ask yourself, why didn't these 3 nations come together at the same time that Britain allied with France? Why didn't they just create this in 1904? Why did we have to wait 3 years? The answer is this, that Britain and Russia have beef. They have props. Are you ready for a little weirdness? Wilhelm, the Kaiser of Germany, is cousins with Nicholas II, the Tsar of Russia. They are both cousins with George, the King of England. They all have the same grandma. You might recognize her. You've heard about her before, Queen Victoria. So these guys are all related. So why? We've clearly got Germany on the other side here. So the question is, why don't these two get along? They do on a personal level. These cousins all have pretty deep affection for one another. But friendly relations are different than diplomatic relations. And these are men not nations, with the exception of Russia, because Nicholas II is the true autocrat, right? He is an absolute monarch. He is Russia. In Britain, George has got a different situation, right? He's got parliament. He's not the head of state anymore. In Germany, Wilhelm wants very much to be that absolute autocrat, but he has to keep the nobility happy and deal with them a little bit. So he can't be absolute. A little bit about the personal relationship. Wilhelm II's a little odd. Okay? He's born with a shriveled arm. It's never quite right. It happened in the womb. He spends his whole life trying to make up for it. He feels like he's the least loved of all of Victoria's grandsons. He feels like his parents hold him back. They were very pro-English. Wilhelm gets some tutors and stuff who make him very pro-Germanic. So that sets him at odds a little bit with Britain. Nicholas II has a very close relationship with Grandma Vicky, and thus a closer relationship with his cousin than Wilhelm does. Wilhelm has kind of an inferiority complex, and he takes that personal issue and makes it an issue of statehood as well. So you can't separate the individuals from the history on this. So what keeps these two apart? It's more than just the personal relationships. It has to do with oil. By 1907, we've got oil, and we've got oil in the Middle East. Who's the big power down there? They control the Suez Canal, they control Egypt, right? Who really, really, really would like to have more power down there? Russia. So Russia starts invading to the south. They want to get down and get hold of some territory. They're making moves on Persia. This whole drive for Russian control further into Southwest Asia and the competition with Britain and other European powers is called the Great Game. Capital G, capital G. The Great Game is this drive for economic and military influence and control over the Middle East. And Britain and Russia have to work some things out in the Great Game before they can agree to ally together against the nation or nations that truly freak them out. Does Britain have any concern about Austria-Hungary? Pretty much no, because Austria-Hungary by 1907 is clearly withering on the vine. If the Ottoman Empire is the sick man of Europe, by 1907 that sickness is clearly multiple cancerous tumors that are untreatable. By 1907, the Austro-Hungarian Empire is showing sincere signs of Alzheimer's. They're pretty ill as well, if not as sick as the Ottoman Empire. So when Britain signs this treaty, they're signing it in opposition to Germany for them. Okay? For Russia, Austria-Hungary still freaks them out plenty for two reasons. One, Austria-Hungary needs to get a handle on those nationalist revolutions because revolutionary ideas spread. And the last thing Russia wants or needs is revolutionary ideas, especially nationalist revolutionary ideas. Because all Russia is a whole bunch of people glopped together and called one thing. That's going to be a problem for them later on. Okay, so when we have all of this put together, in the red, the Triple Alliance. And this is the first Triple Alliance, the 1882. If we had the 1883 Triple Alliance, Romania here would be red as well. In the blue, you have the Triple Entente, Britain, France, Russia. And the, Baby Diarrhea Brown, those are the neutral countries, okay? Except this doesn't tell the whole story because what do we know about Serbia? They have a secret treaty with Austria-Hungary. Oh, and by the way, somehow, when Austria-Hungary renews that dual alliance from time to time with Germany, they keep forgetting to tell Germany that they have that secret treaty with Serbia. And, oh, the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. Well, after 1902, when Italy has that alliance with France, they forget to mention that at the renewal ceremony with Germany and Austria-Hungary. There's all these secret alliances on top of the public ones. For instance, look here at these two very sad, very tiny little neutral nations, Netherlands and Belgium. Belgium looks incredibly vulnerable, right? Just so tiny. Well, they don't feel very vulnerable because they have a secret treaty with Britain. Britain has pledged to protect the territorial integrity of Belgium. Switzerland, they don't need nobody. They got mountains. They're all right. Nobody's going to mess with them. Seriously, it would be like a death wish to try to invade Switzerland. Worse than a land war in Russia in the fall. It would not go well. Okay. So this little area, this powder keg of Europe down here in the Balkans, that's going to be a problem for us. Look at all this. By the way, Poland, remember the divisions of Poland under Catherine? Poland used to be right there, and they divided it up. Yep. So, kind of right on top of each other, aren't they? All right. Things that set us up further for this war. France passes what's known as the 3-year service law. It is a law that requires all French men to serve 3 years in the military. All French men have to serve 3 years in the military. By the time we get to 1914, the result of this law is this. 80% of French men are ready to go to war. They've got their service, they've got their training, boom, go to war. Compare that with Germany, where 50% of men in 1914 are ready to go to war. And you think to yourself, oh, well, France has got this one. Except that France's population is smaller. So 80% of a smaller number is not necessarily bigger than 50% of a much larger number. France had to put this in place in order to be able to hold their own militarily against Germany. Okay? Pile on top of this that France, in the Franco-Prussian War, lost these two little territories, Alsace and Lorraine. They lost the Alsace and Lorraine to Germany. These are very fertile lands. They're populous lands. They have strong rivers running through them. Even if you have a coal-powered factory, you still need water to make the steam, right? When France lost these, this is a huge boost to Germany industrializing and becoming a manufacturing powerhouse. France will never get over the loss of the Alsace and Lorraine. It will still be an issue for them 34 years later when World War I breaks out. Remember, France got tricked into the Franco-Prussian War, right? Bismarck tricked them, but good. One might assume that the French are still a little angry about having been fooled as well. We'll come back to this. I want to show you Alsace and Lorraine. Okay. This dark line here, okay, is border. I'm sorry, no, it's not. That is the Maginot Line. No, it's not. What is that? Oh, it's a river. No, it's not. What is that? Oh, okay, this is a map from later on in the war. This is we'll come back and we'll look at this map again. In 1917, the war in the Western Front has fallen into a stalemate, and this dark line is the Western Front. All the way, here's the North Sea. Have you heard of a place in France called Dunkirk? You'll hear about it when we do World War II. Okay, so here's Belgium up here. Okay, the River Meuse helps form some of their border. Okay, here's Luxembourg. Here's the Rhine River inside of Germany a little bit. Okay, here's the Lorraine, this region right here. Here's the Alsace. Here's the Rhine River, which had formed the border with Germany. But after the Franco-Prussian War, all of this here goes straight to Germany. So it leaves the rest of France upset. To give you some reference, here's Paris, okay, here to the west. So this front line gets pretty close to the capital city of France. We'll talk about that again when we get there. You're going to want to go back. The Schlieffen Plan. What language does Schlieffen sound like? Sounds German. Very good. Von Schlieffen is the field marshal in charge of preparing German battle plans. And the Germans are seriously ready for this war when it comes. The Schlieffen Plan is their plan to mop up the war in a matter of weeks. Okay? The Schlieffen Plan says this, and we're going to go back here. Germany is going to attack into France. They're going to be ready. They're going to have all their troops massed over here in the western part of Germany. They're going to be ready, and when the war starts, boom, they're off. In a couple of weeks, they wipe out France. Boom, ready, done. They wheel around, they ship their troops back across Germany, which they can do because they have an excellent rail system. Germany's industrialized now. Boom, right across Germany, and they are ready right there at the Russian border by the time the Russians finally get their troops mobilized and over to the border. Great plan. This plan allows Germany 30 days to kick France's hiney, 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks to relocate their troops and supplies to the east. Awesome plan. Except von Schlieffen forgot something. Von Schlieffen forgot that the French had helped Russia build up their rail system. And what would have taken 30 days for Russia to mobilize now is only going to take them 2 weeks. Oops. There are other problems with the Schlieffen Plan that we'll discuss when we get into Section 2 and we actually start the shooting war. I want to tell you a quick story about the actual assassination of Franz Ferdinand, which your section ends with. I'm not going to cover it because you had it last year and your book does a pretty good job. But Franz Ferdinand married a woman below his stature. Okay? He is the crown prince of the Habsburg Empire. He's next in line to be the emperor. Marries someone below his stature. The family's not pleased. They won't let her hang out at family things when they all get together for family picnics. They do public appearances. She has to stay home. Okay? Sophie is her name. Okay? He's really excited to be going to visit Serbia. I'm sorry, not Serbia, Bosnia. And when he goes, he takes Sophie with him. Because the rest of the family isn't there, he can do that. He's the crown prince after all. When he's lots of miles away from Daddy, he can stand on his own 2 feet and think for himself. Okay? Sophie's pregnant. It's so exciting. So they're there, and they're going to go for some drives. By the way, this is early days of the automobile. Okay? They don't have fuel pumps in the old Model Ts. No fuel pumps to move the gas from the fuel tank in the rear up to the engine. So when the gas tank in a Model T got below a certain level, if you were trying to drive uphill, you couldn't drive uphill because the level of the fuel in the tank would level out and be below the intake and you would lose suction. So if you wanted to go up a hill and you were running low on fuel, you had to back up the hill where gravity would help the gas get to the engine. Okay. So Sophie and Franz Ferdinand, they're out for their drive in Sarajevo, and there's an attempt on their lives. Nowhere near them, but one of his aides is injured. So they make their appearance, and then Franz Ferdinand says, I want to go to the hospital and visit him. And they're like, oh no, we can't, we don't have that mapped out, and not a good idea. Says, we're going. He's Crown Prince, what are you gonna say, no? So they go. They leave the hospital, they're trying to get back on schedule. Driver takes a wrong turn. Remember, they've driven out of their way, they're getting a little low on gas. In order to get turned around, he has to do some of the backwards driving, okay? And then he's lost a little bit. Now, the Black Hand is this nationalist group that's planned the assassination, okay? Gavrilo Princip is one of 7 different assassins in Sarajevo this day. Okay? He is so ready to die for his cause, because that's the only way that most assassins can truly be successful, is if they're willing to sacrifice their life in exchange for the life of the person they're trying to kill. He's ready to go. Ready to go. He's missed his opportunity twice. He's bummed out. He's sitting in a little cafe, eating a sandwich. And he looks out the window, and he can't believe his eyes. There's the Archduke's car, just sitting there, while the driver's trying to figure out where to go. And he's like, go? Like cartoon eyes, boing, 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 boing. Goes running out, draws his gun, shoots Sophie in her pregnant belly. Franz stands up and says, Sophie! Bang, bang. Shoots them both. Here's where it gets comical. Gavrilo Princip goes running over, it's August, okay? Goes running over to the bridge and leaps off to be swept away in the current of the river, and goes in the mud where the river has dried up because it's August and it's been a dry summer. And he's laying there face down in the mud, making his escape when they come and arrest him. Look at him.